Maya Trotz.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm presenting on behalf of Linden, who did this as a master's project at this beginning of COVID. Really looking at, in the Caribbean and Florida, what was the impact of COVID-19 on restoration activities. And here is a map of the sites where she interviewed and did a survey with respondents representing, I think, 10 different countries and 11 different restoration programs that varied in size and methodologies. 6 of these were follow-up interviews done between November 2020 and February 21. And the surveys were done in September 2020, all using an IRB-approved method from USF. The topics we were looking at were really, how did COVID impact restoration programs? How did they perceptions on the impact on reef health? And we are civil and environmental engineers, and so really looking at ways in which we could intersect with the restoration practitioners and how restoration could be more resilient in the future to various types of disruptions. So some of the results we found were major causes of disruptions, of course, were financial insecurity. Reef restorations all were disrupted. Lack of travel. In some places, there was lack of travel between districts, and so people can get from one village to the next. Lack of funding. Many restoration practitioners depend on tourism, and that was not happening. And lack of workers. People were many places they're not seen as essential workers. In one of the jurisdictions, the restoration group was seen as essential workers, so they were definitely able to continue doing their work. But funding and financial security, significant challenges. In terms of major cause of disruption from things like government protocols, I mentioned earlier just now the issue of essential workers not being restoration practitioners. But things like the stay-in-place orders, no international travel, no tourism, boating restrictions, these are all things that limited activities in by certain practitioners. And then in terms of the second question on perceptions of changes in the reef. So this is just showing some of the main observations. And one to look at is this idea of less fish. In particular, communities where tourism as the main industry has been shut down. Many people did not have jobs. I'm sure for those practitioners in here, you are all contributing instead to sort of food security and collecting hampers to give to people in your communities. And so there was people thought that there were less fish when they did get out onto the reef. These images don't necessarily go with this quote, but there was this perception by communities. The people felt there was also this increase in appreciation for the work of practitioners during that was amplified during COVID-19. Some of the adaptations to COVID-19, these are some of the things that people were doing. Some are still doing it. Favoring snorkeling trips over diving, more affordable, more accessible to local communities. The importance of developing a local workforce. So we'll have some of these organizations depend on tourists who come in to do some of the restoration activities. When a tourist's not there, you don't have a workforce to do it. And so how do you instead invest in a local community so that they become your practitioners and could perform the work themselves? This went on performing field work themselves. Many of the persons that we talked to or who responded to the survey were the managers or the founders of these organizations, and not necessarily the ones who always get out into the field. And during COVID-19, they got out into the field or had to get out into the field a lot more because their travel itself was also restricted. Intersections with environmental engineering, I'll just segue a little here. Always looking for ways in which to connect with the restoration practitioners Reef fence is definitely something that is amplifying that for civil engineers right now. But here's a list of other things. I'll talk about this thing on more integration and nature-based solutions. I am the PI on a new grant from the National Science Foundation for a large-scale coastlines and people hub. And I'm co-directing that with Mike Beck from Santa Cruz. And so definitely would like to talk to you some more, Carlos, about the issue of equity and things like the Justice 40 initiative, because our whole focus is on equitable nature-based solutions, and we're doing it with 10 partners in Belize, Miami area, and in the US Virgin Islands. So that connection to the practitioner community is there. Just some conclusions here. I do see that I am out of time, so thank you very much. No problem.
Okay. Yeah. You're the last talk of the day, huh?
Oh, really?
At least in this room.